everybody. Welcome to this edition of Mindwatch. I'm Dan Katz.
And I'm Gary. Just kidding. I'm Thomas.
Oh, I kind of like Gary, right? Like this, isn't that SpongeBob's pet snail?
That is, yeah, meow. Yep, that's his pet snail.
I love
So
Gary. Um, so it's really good to be with you guys today. This is our first vidcast.
so you finally get to see what our faces look like. If you don't know what
Yeah.
we before. Here's a zoom up.
So yes, I'm really excited though. Like I'm really excited that we're doing this vid-wise instead of just on a traditional verbal podcast. I think it's always like a lot of fun to be able to see people and their reactions and stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Also it feels a little more personable as well. It feels like you're connecting with the person, even though you're not like physically there with them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's a lot of fun. So today, Thomas, so at the time of this recording, mindfullme just posted their new Sunday affirmation, which I'm actually loving. Do you love the new Sunday affirmations that we're doing on the website?
I do. Yeah. I am strong.
That's this week's is I am strong. And our artist is Tatiana Horsky, and she is great. So we've had, I'm the captain of my own ship. I'm the hero of my own story. This week is I am strong. And each week she designed something visual to go
Do you
along with.
mean like physically strong, or do you mean like mentally strong, or both?
Well, I think it could be both. I think the intention is both. We also have a meditation that comes out that kind of like mirrors it. It's read by Ryan Shull this week, and it kind of also deals with the idea of being mentally strong, and especially through your storms that you have in your life. And so that's really cool. So I'm really excited for that to come out. But I love this idea of like I am strong. And when you and I were doing show prep earlier for this, you kind of had like a really neat take on the idea of I am strong.
Yeah. So, like I said, where I was like, is it physically strong or is it like mentally strong? And it's both essentially. Because when you think of I am strong and you think of mind and body, because those two things are pretty much connected, right? Like,
Yeah.
we always think of the mind body connection. Like, let's say if you're like going to exercise, a lot of like fitness people say that if you focus on your form, it really hits on that mind body connection and you can truly feel it within your body. It's like hard to describe in words, but it's a true feeling that you have within yourself that it's one fluid motion. It's all there and everything's connected. You don't necessarily have to separate the physical and the mental part of it, even though you kind of have to when you're talking in terms of context. But yeah, that was my take on it, was that you don't have to separate mind and physical health when those two kind of go hand in hand. Like one is always going to affect the other.
I agree. I think one of the things too that we were talking about when we were like, prepping for this was the idea of looking at different aspects of your life, right? That you may not necessarily have like absolute control over and how to kind of like deal with that.
Yeah. I always like the idea of like control only what you can control. And it was funny when I kind of
That's
like
really good.
pitched
I
this.
like that. Control only
Yeah.
what you can control.
I feel like that's a good name for the name of this podcast. I feel like we should title it something along those lines.
I like that. Control only what you can control.
And
Did you
like
just like make
my
that up or did you get that from something?
no, I pretty sure I got it from somewhere. I don't necessarily remember where.
Okay, I'm
Um,
looking it up.
but yeah, so initially when I came up with this idea, because remember we were talking and you were like, "Oh, that's a really good
Yeah,
idea."
yeah.
So I was listening to this podcast with this NBA player. His name is Victor Oladipo, and he currently plays with Miami Heat.
Oh,
And
Miami.
just to give like a quick summary of like what happened with him, a few years ago when he was playing in Indiana, he was at the height of his career. He was making All-Star games. He was, all defensive player, and he was up next for like a big contract. And then all of a sudden, he plays sports, so a lot of physical contact, and he landed awkwardly, and literally like his leg bent in half. Like I'm not
Really
even like
terrifying when it happened. Like it was
it,
terrifying to look at.
it was really really terrifying. And if you're like queasy at that kind of stuff, I don't necessarily recommend going up to look at it. But hey, it's up to your discretion. So that came at a really bad time. He was out for the entire year, missed that whole year, the rest of the season, and then he had surgery to repair it. But he put his trust into these doctors, because obviously we don't know anything about in terms of like the medical field. That's why you go to these kind of people.
Absolutely.
And essentially what happened is they did the surgery wrong the first time. So he went through that again a second time and re-injured the same, I think it was his quadricep, and he re-injured the same thing. So he had to go through that again. And he was talking about like the mental ups and downs through that whole situation and kind of like where he is right now. And like a big emphasis that he kept talking about is just like control what you can control in the moment. Like I like to use a Pat Riley mantra, which is keep the main thing the main thing. And his main thing at the time was I can only focus on getting healthier and rehabbing. But obviously, it's easier said than done, right? Like it's normal to go through those like self doubt. It's normal to have those negative intrusive thoughts, especially when you're going something as surreal as that experience must have been for him. So, and it's all just like part of the journey. That's how I like to see it too. Like when you're in these like tough times, you have to go through the journey in order to become better, in order to grow as a person, right? Because without those failures, where would we be today? We're stronger today because of those failures. So we need to go through that in order to get where we are today, which is a strong, and it's a lifelong thing. Like we're always, no matter what age you are, you're always going to run into road bumps and all that kind of thing. It's all about just learning from those experiences and growing as a person and maturing.
You are going to go through those roadblocks. And I think that's one of the things where we can kind of like look at I am strong because, all right, so if we're looking at Victor Oladipo, imagine one going through the injury that he went through. It must have been terrifying in and of itself. Okay. The first thing you have is my career's over and I can never get back. So you go through surgery, you think everything's going well. Doctors are saying, yep, you're healing right. You get traded essentially. Well, I don't remember if he got traded or if he was just a free agent to come to the Heat, but he comes to the Heat. He got traded,
traded
right?
on a,
Right. So now he comes to the Heat, and
he
all of
got
a sudden,
traded to Oklahoma.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying he got traded while he was on an airplane.
Yeah, so I remember that. That's right. So he gets traded. He
Yeah.
comes to Heat, which is where he wanted to be, anyways. And now he's trying to like come back and come back, and he's got to be strong through this entire process because if he's not, then his career is over. So he's kind of fighting for his career. So you have ups and downs and ups and downs in rehab. I mean, I had to rehab my shoulder. I'm not an athlete. I'm not Victor Oladipo, but man, I will tell you, just in that year-long process after my rotator cuff surgery was kind of like, there's a lot of times where you're down. You got to stay positive. You got to stay strong. Because you got to get through it. What are you going to do, right? So here's this guy that does this. Now he comes to the Heat and he's playing. He re-injures it, then realizes that the doctors did it wrong. Now he's got to go through the entire process all over again. And through this whole thing, still not knowing if he's going to be able to play basketball at the level that he played. People are doubting him. He's kind of like on this island alone. And it's like, how do you get through that? And you're right. You've got to be strong physically to get through it. And you've got to be strong mentally to get through it. And, when you think about regular folk like you and I, we also have to do things like that with our trials and tribulations and just our traditional life, which is what the majority of people out there do. So how do I think that's most people's questions that I get is how. Okay, I get it. Strong. I get the affirmation. I am strong. Now what? How do you do that? How do you stay strong and focused mentally and physically in times of dismay?
Me personally, or are you asking me to give
I
advice
think
generally?
both. I think, people want to hear what you and I do personally, but in general, what do people do? Right? I
I
mean,
would
I
say,
would say,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, I would say meditation is definitely one because that's kind of like what our whole thing is centered around, right? Is mindfulness meditation, and that's definitely part of it. But that's also going to be a very long process. Also, physical exercise you put into your body. one thing I like to do as well is like keep yourself busy. So like things like reading or like watching a good TV show, like something that's gonna help you focus on that one particular thing and not necessarily all the trials and tribulations you're dealing with. It's not necessarily like you're ignoring that and putting it to the side. It's just giving you a moment like, okay, let me escape from this for a second and just like watch TV. Like recently, I keep telling you to watch this TV show called Severance,
Oh
and
well,
I don't. Maybe when I come visit, we'll watch all the episodes. But
that'll be
it's
good.
been a really long time. It's been a really long time since I've been that invested in a TV show, and it truly felt like nothing else was going on, and I was just so interested in what was going on with these characters, what was happening in the environment of this TV show. So I would say some forms of escapism, like art or literature, or maybe some forms of like self-expression. Like one thing that my girlfriend Talia and I are going to start doing is we want to try just doing some little paintings, you know. We want to go to Michael's and just get some like finger paints or like some white paint and just like put it on a canvas to just see what comes up. Because I was like, you know what, I feel like that's a good way to express, and I feel like whatever comes out is what it kind of like is going up the subconscious of my brain a little bit. So yeah, I would say mindful
I think that's a
eating.
really cool idea.
Yeah.
Is that kind of self-expression. But I want to go back to something which I think is something to kind of stick to or explore, excuse me, explore. So we say, and mindful me by this point, right? We're right now, you and I are recording this on, September 4th, and it will air, I think, September 8th of 2022. But essentially, the company right now is about 2 years old, maybe 2.5 years old. And the whole thing about Mindful Me is, you know, meditation, taking care of yourself, and this is all incredible. But you are right. Right. But you're right about something because if you're going through a really rough patch in your life, meditation is incredible. Daily meditation is incredible, whether or not things are good, bad, or indifferent, because it just helps to empty the glass. It helps to empty your brain, helps to, clean your brain. Our mentor, Lisa, talks about the fact like it's Windex on a dirty window, right? And you got to do that every day. So I like that.
Yep.
But kicking things up a notch, I think, is important. And the idea of escapism, I think, is interesting, but how to escape? I love TV. I love the fingerprints. I love reading, music, and all that is great. Daydreaming. Now, daydreaming, I think, is so underrated because what you put out into the universe is what you're going to get back. It is. The ability to daydream, to imagine, right? And Neil Goddard really put it well. It's like what you are imagining is what you're telling the universe that you want. And the thing is, it's not visualization because everyone's like, oh, make a vision board. And I love vision boards. I love my vision boards. They're amazing and they're great. And vision boards are awesome about like kind of getting stuff on paper and figuring things out. And it's like a big puzzle and then it kind of looks. But imagination uses all your senses. And if you're sitting back and you're having a nice daydream, it's not just visualizing it, but within that visualization, you can see it, hear it, and touch it, and become one with it. And that is a great way of showing strength because in my daydreams, I am strong, okay? And helping you to connect with the strength that you truly have in your day to day life. And sending out in the universe, this is what I want, this is what we're getting back. But it's really also showing you that you have the strength, you can visualize it, feel it, daydream it. But if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to daydream it and connect with it so well. So I think, we're looking at how, and people always ask for advice. I think that's the thing that people ask me more than anything. Well, how do you do this? And the old adage, decades ago was, oh, just let it be. I'm with that too. But I think you have to do something a little extra. And I think you got to meet the universe halfway. And I think this is a great tool to use, not the end all be all, but a great tool to use.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point because I didn't really think of daydreaming that way. Because if you really think about it, daydreaming in a way is manifesting, right? So
It
I,
is. I love the word.
yeah, and taking this for an example, we all daydream. Sometimes it can be a little bit much, depending on what you're daydreaming about, because those are also like intrusive thoughts. So there's a good differentiation between like daydreaming and manifesting and putting things out into the universe versus like intrusive thoughts. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by intrusive thoughts?
Like, oh, I'm not enough, or I'm not good
Oh,
enough.
we're always positive in our
What
daydreams.
could go wrong in
That's
this
the bottom
situation?
line.
Yeah,
We have to be positive, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Like I daydream all the time about like where my acting career is gonna be in X amount of years. And I was actually talking to one of my coworkers the other day, and he's honestly one of the most positive people I've ever met. He honestly, every time I'm around him, I'm like, dude, you encourage me to just be way more positive. And his thing that he was talking about, he was like, you know what? I'm going to get this role. He's like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to be doing this. He's like, I love to put out that positive energy in the universe. And even if it doesn't go my way and I don't get it, I'm just like, it wasn't meant to be anyway. They're missing out on this. So it's good to put a positive spin on all those kind of things. Even when things come out as negative, there's always a positive spin that you could kind of put on it to turn it around and manifest it in a different way.
And that's the thing. It's like when he's saying, I'm going to get this role, he's being strong and he's
Yeah.
being mentally strong and saying, this is the way it's going to happen, which is incredible. And now, can you imagine just 5 minutes of daydreaming with such a powerful individual? Wow. I mean, things
Yeah.
could just shift like crazy, just
And
like
going,
crazy.
I know, right? And going to like a more, I guess, like scientific approach to this. Imagine like thousands of years long after we're gone. Because I forget what the percentage is, but I think right now humans only use like 4% of our
No, it's
brains.
some ridiculously low amount of the percentage of our brain that we use.
Right. Imagine like thousands of years down the line, whatever may be going on at the time. But at that point, maybe humans have evolved to the point where your daydreaming actually does manifest. And I was thinking about that actually pretty recently, and I was like, how amazing would that be? I mean, that could be good and bad.
But Thomas, I think you don't need to wait 1,000 years.
That's
You can do
true.
it right now. And
True.
that's the thing. Manifesting, daydreaming,
It'll
imagining,
be like a Professor X, just
or just
and
be Thomas.
yeah.
Just be Thomas.
But what if I want to be Professor X?
Well, then daydream your Professor X and see what happens. Your
I'm not
genes might
sure.
mutate.
I just want to be Patrick Stewart, if I'm being honest.
Well, there you go. So these are some great things to think about, and of course, I always love our conversations and just to give some people some reminders. Mindful Me is converting over to this vidcast format from our podcast. Still going to come out every Thursday. Ours will be out, and then after us comes TBH, and then after TBH is 365. TBH is just like a journey through life, and 365 is our nutrition and sports. Kind of like information and suggestions. And then, of course, we've got Midnight Chats, which is like our college talk and college fun, right? And then we have after that, we've got Ben's Den, which is really cool. It's our newest of our podcasts, and I highly, highly encourage everyone to listen to it. Ben is really a great young man. He's a published author, and he's a great, great, great volunteer within Mindful Me. And every podcast, he's going to have a special guest that's going to come on to talk about the mind-body connection. So I appreciate it, Thomas. I know another 6 weeks we'll visit each other again. Just keep listening to our podcast, liking, subscribing wherever it is that you find your podcasts. Please visit our YouTube page, our website, mindfullme.org. That's mindful with 2 L's. Mindwatch comes out every 5 weeks right now, and I'm excited and keep watching for Thomas Scholl because he is doing lots of different projects. So you'll see him at a theater and TV screen near you soon.
Yeah, manifesting it.
It is happening. So,
it
all right, guys, you have a really, 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 really great rest of your week. Again, thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe, and we really appreciate your patronage. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. See you soon.